Hi, thanks for tuning in today. I'm going to veer off a little bit from the mainstream philosophy to a more fringe or secretive type of teaching. We're going to look at Hermeticism, a more ancient tradition whose teachings in the past have been reserved to initiates of secretive orders such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the builders of the Aditum, Ordo Templi Orientis, the Servants of the Light, and others. So, in recent decades, there has been a significant increase in the availability of Hermetic knowledge to the public. Books, websites, and online forums contribute to the dissemination of Hermetic principles and practices. Modern practitioners often share their insights and experiences openly, contributing to a more accessible and diverse understanding of Hermeticism. Now, I've been always interested in wisdom traditions of all kinds, so it's natural to me to also include Hermetic thinking. My goal doing these videos is to give you a glimpse on what is available and to give you sort of a starting point for your own research. I feel that we live in a time where we are called to rely less on institutions, fixed beliefs or dogmas, and we are to make up our own minds and also take responsibility over our own lives. And I found the book that we're going to look at today helpful in understanding the reality that we currently live in. It is good to have a set of undogmatic principles which you can use for orientation. I hope you can get something out of it as well, and with that said, let's dive right in. The Kybalion, a Hermetic philosophy, was written in 1908 and was published by the Three Initiates. The Three Initiates is the pseudonym of William Walker Atkinson. William Walker Atkinson was an American attorney, businessman, and writer on topics related to New Thought, spirituality, and occultism. He used various pseudonyms, including Yogi Ramacharaka, hard to pronounce, Theron Dumont, and also the Three Initiates. Atkinson was a prominent figure in the early 20th century in the New Thought movement, which emphasized the power of positive thinking and the role of the mind in creating one's own reality. He wrote extensively on topics such as mental healing, personal development, and the law of attraction. Under the pseudonym Yogi Ramacharaka, he explored Eastern philosophy and yogic practices, adapting them for Western audiences. When I started doing some background research, I found it astonishing how much of this type of material was published right around the turn of the 20th century. Prominent figures like Aleister Crowley, Dion Fortune, and Israel Regardie played crucial roles in disseminating Hermetic ideas to a broader audience. Before we look at the Kybalion, let's just cover some basics about Hermeticism. Let's start with the definition of the word esoteric, because that term has unfounded negative connotations that I'd like to get rid of first. Hermeticism is an ancient, esoteric, philosophical and spiritual tradition that traces its roots back to teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. He is a legendary figure believed to be a fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Key aspects of Hermetic philosophy include the Hermetic principles, which we are going to look at today. A second aspect is alchemy. Hermeticism has a strong association with alchemy, both in the literal pursuit of transmuting base metals into gold and also in a symbolic sense. In the Hermetic tradition, alchemy is seen as a spiritual and psychological process of personal transformation and enlightenment. Thirdly, we have the Emerald Tablet. One of the foundational texts in Hermeticism, is the Emerald Tablet, a short and mysterious text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. It contains the famous phrase, "as above, so below," and it is considered a key source of Hermetic wisdom. Spiritual evolution is another aspect of Hermetic philosophy. Hermeticism emphasizes the idea of spiritual evolution and continuous refinement. The pursuit of knowledge, of self-awareness and spiritual growth is seen as essential to understanding and aligning oneself with the divine. Lastly, we have the aspect of syncretism. Hermetic philosophy is known for its syncretic nature, blending elements from various religious, mystical, and philosophical traditions. It incorporates influences from ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Hellenistic philosophies, as well as Gnostic and Neoplatonic ideas. Today, Hermeticism continues to be studied and practiced by individuals interested in the pursuit of spiritual wisdom and self-transformation. The Kybalion was an important text for 20th century American occultism and also spirituality. The principles laid out in the book are meant to provide insight into the nature of reality and to guide individuals in their spiritual and personal development. In the 21st century, some of the principles laid out in the Kybalion were incorporated into the 2006 bestseller The Secret. You've probably heard of that, it was really prominent. As is the case with other spiritual books, the Kybalion invokes the hard physical sciences in support of its contents. It is an attempt to frame ancient and eternal ideas in the terms that make the most sense to contemporary readers. Whether you will be able to get anything out of this book or other Hermetic texts depends entirely on your own state of consciousness. There was a reason for texts such as these to be passed from teacher to student for centuries, and for them not to have been widely published. The truth was supposedly reserved for the few who were ready to comprehend and also master it. Publishing such contents widely brings with it the danger that lesser developed minds will attempt to use the principles only for personal improvement or gain. But the principles laid out in the Kybalion are supposed to inspire us to develop into more conscious beings, going beyond the limiting notion of ego or self. The introduction of the book includes the ominous statement, So the Kybalion outlines 7 Hermetic principles that are said to govern the universe. They are the principle of mentalism. That's the idea that the universe is a mental construct and that the mind is the ultimate reality. The second principle is that of correspondence. As above, so below. The idea that there is a correspondence between the various planes of existence. The third principle is the principle of vibration. Everything in the universe is in constant motion, vibrating at different frequencies. The fourth principle is that of polarity. Everything has its opposite, and opposites are essentially the same in nature, but different in degree. The fifth principle is that of rhythm. The natural cycles and rhythms in all things, from the cosmic to the individual. Sixth, we have the principle of causality. Every cause has an effect, and every effect has a cause. The seventh principle is the principle of gender. The idea that gender is manifested in everything, and masculine and feminine principles are present in all aspects of life. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into the principles today because I want to give you an incentive to actually read the book yourselves and give yourselves enough time to meditate on the principles if you're interested in that type of subject. Instead, what I would like to do is to point out parallels in the spaces of philosophy or science where we see those Hermetic principles mirrored throughout history. I can only give you a glimpse, of course, on how interconnected those principles are. I can give you some names and terms that you can research for yourselves if you feel drawn to them. So what I did is I drew a sort of mind map. I'm not saying this is complete, of course, but it's a start. I've always found this helpful to sort of point out connections, especially when you're new to a topic. It's easy to get lost when you lack context. So we'll start with a circle. We'll line up the 7 principles on it, and we'll scatter some of the topics that I can think of, topics, concepts and names with each principle. Starting with the principle of mentalism, I'm just going to run you through the first principle in detail, otherwise this is going to take forever. But you'll have the overview on all the connections in the end. You can take a screenshot if you want. So regarding the principle of mentalism, we have thematic connections to Berkeleyan idealism. George Berkeley posited that reality exists in the mind of the perceiver, and objects in the external world would have no independent existence, but they exist as ideas in the mind of God and also in individual minds. There's also parallels with German idealism of Kant and Hegel. Kant's idealism emphasizes the subjective nature of human knowledge, and it posits that the mind is not a passive receiver of external stimuli, but an active participant in constructing our experience of the world. Unlike Kant's transcendental idealism, Hegel sought to overcome the dualism between subject and object. He argued that the absolute spirit is both the subject and the object, and that apparent divisions in reality are reconciled in the grand synthesis of absolute knowledge. We can also draw parallels to the phenomenology of Edmund Husserl, who emphasized the study of consciousness and subjective experience, as well as Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who explored the embodied nature of perception. We can make a link to panpsychism, which holds that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, of the universe. While not identical to mentalism, it suggests a foundational role for mind and consciousness in the fabric of reality. Also, some interpretations of quantum physics and consciousness studies suggest a connection between the observer and the observed, echoing themes of mentalism, of that first Hermetic principle. Some of the representatives of that line of thought are Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff with their OR theory, as well as Henry Stapp and David Bohm. I made a series of videos on a conversation between David Bohm and the spiritual leader Jiddu Krishnamurti on this channel. You can find a separate playlist on that. Now, here's the full picture on the associations that I was able to come up with for each of the 7 principles. As I said, there is no time to go into all of these in one video, so just take a screenshot and do your own research from here. I hope I was able to show you that Hermetic principles are profoundly interconnected with diverse philosophical, psychological and scientific theories. They encapsulate timeless and universal wisdom from Eastern philosophies to Western sciences, from ancient mystical traditions to modern psychological frameworks. The principles serve as a solid framework that we can use for orientation. We can use that for orientation in an increasingly complex and chaotic world. And in my opinion, this really is a worthwhile read. You can easily finish it in half a day, and it will give you a ton of food for thought. Links are in the description box below. I hope you found this information helpful. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.